Hi, this is Marina James, and I'm so excited to be sharing with you all that I've learned about my Student Support Office this summer. I did research on the TRiO program at Walla Walla Community College, so let's go ahead and begin. I wanted to start by giving some context about Walla Walla Community College, who they are, their demographics, and the like, so that you have a general sense of the idea as to how the TRiO program fits into the overall structure of the campus community. Walla Walla Community College is located in Walla Walla, Washington, which is in the southeast part of Washington state. It's only about 15 minutes from the Washington-Oregon border. 62% of their students receive 62% of their students attend full-time, while 43% of their students receive financial aid. So more than half are attending full-time, but less than half are receiving financial aid. They are a predominantly white institution with 58% of their students being white, and their second largest ethnicity is Hispanic Latinx at 25%. More than half of their students are in their 20s, so that's anywhere from 20 to 29. That is the largest chunk of students that they serve, and 43% of their students are attending Walla Walla specifically to go straight into the workforce, opposed to folks who are interested in continuing education or transferring to a four-year degree. So they mostly serve students who are looking to do that direct transfer. The office staff of the TRiO program at Walla Walla consists of 7 people. Laura Conrad, who is the director, and I had the privilege of chatting with Laura Conrad. She's been in this position for about 2 years now, and all of our communications did happen remotely because I am in California for the summer and not in Washington. We chatted both via phone and through email, and these communications happened between June 6th and July 16th. Laura is also assisted by a woman named Claire. She's the assistant director at the institution. And then lastly, the office is supported by 5 different TRiO advisors. The advisors are the folks who work the closest with the TRiO students. And I'll talk a little bit more about the role that the advisors play later on in my presentation. So the first part of my presentation is just about the TRiO program in general, some of those fast facts about the TRiO program at Walla Walla specifically. I really like this quote that comes from the National TRiO website, and it's just a really good and encompassing message about the program itself. And this reads, "The TRiO programs were the first national college access and retention programs to address the serious social and cultural barriers to education in America." Again, like I said, that comes from the National TRiO website. And I think it's important to understand the history of the TRiO program nationally, just as important as it is to understand the history of the TRiO program on campus. So nationally, the TRiO program, it was started by President Lyndon B. Johnson for his, as a way to address his War on Poverty plan. This plan happened in kind of a 3-part segment. So in 1964, Upward Bound began. Upward Bound targets low-income high school students. Then in 1965, Talent Search was rolled out, and that is also low-income high school students, but specifically Talent Search works with these students on advising and financial education and helping students as they're working on that transfer from high school into college. And then the last program that came out of this educational decree that President Johnson put together was the Special Services for Disadvantaged Students, which is now called Student Support Services, or SSS. And this happened in 1968. And SSS is grant money for universities to spend on TRiO students. So this is academic advising once students are at the institution, low-level counseling, and other resources and services that will greatly benefit the population who TRiO pulls in. The national program has grown from those initial 3 programs to 9 different programs, including one of their most popular programs, which is the McNair Achievement Program, which is a program that prepares students for a graduate degree, so whether that's a master's or a doctorate degree. TRiO money is a grant awarded for a specific period of time, and it is highly competitive. So every couple of years, every TRiO program has to reapply for their grant money, and through that reapplication process, there's the potential that an institution will lose its grant money for their TRiO programs. This grant money specifically comes from the Department of Education, and it is considered Title IV funding. Luckily for Walla Walla Community College, knowing all that information, the program began on campus in the late 1980s and has continuously been on campus since that point. So luckily for them and their students, they have been able to maintain their grant funding. Their program serves about 288 students annually, and their SSS program is the second largest serves the second largest number of students in the state of Washington. And these were facts that were shared with me from Laura, the director. So looking further into the program students and who this program serves, nationally, 2/3 of the students served in the TRiO program must come from families with incomes at 150% or less of the federal poverty level, and neither parent can have graduated from college. The other defining factors in terms of who can qualify to be a TRiO program is that you have to be a student who is first generation, a student from a historically marginalized identity group, including folks with disabilities, and there's a pretty narrow distinction that they have, where they say that we support folks with marginalized identities and we support folks with disabilities. They also support folks who are veterans or have veteran status. So those are kind of the qualifications that are needed in order to become a TRiO student. Their programs, as mentioned in the previous slide, it serves middle school, high school, and college students, depending on whether, an institution has an upward bound program, then you're working with the middle school and high school, or they have an SSS program or a McNair program, which means they're working with the college students. Over half of TRiO students nationally are students of color, and more than 7,000 students have disabilities, those who qualify and are enrolled in TRiO programs at institutions across the United States. Specifically at Walla Walla Community College, their end goal when it comes to supporting and programming for their students, Laura shared, is they want to strengthen student motivation and engagement in learning. And they do this specifically by utilizing strategies to identify and strengthen non-cognitive skills and behaviors. They do this through strengths-based advising and appreciative inquiry, those were Laura's words, with a handful of assessment tools like strength finders, learning styles, and career assessment tools. So again, going back to this idea of helping students academically, helping them engage and stay motivated. But what is unique specifically about this program, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on in my presentation, is that because this TRiO program is at a 2-year institution, there is that dual factor of students who are interested in going straight into the workforce. And if you recall, again, 43% of their students, most of their students are interested in going straight into the workforce. But then this program also works with students who are interested, and this program supports students who are interested and are going through the transfer process from Walla Walla into a 4-year institution. So all SSS projects must provide the following, and these are national mandates by the Department of Education through the TRiO grant funding. So these, all programs, regardless of what their personal goals or intentions are, all programs must provide the following: academic tutoring, advice and assistant and post-secondary course selection. So that's TRiO students will receive advising from the institutional advisors, however that system works at that institution, but TRiO students also will receive advising, academic advising from TRiO advisors specifically. So those 5 TRiO advisors that I talked about when I talked about the Walla Walla staff breakdown, that is part of the role that those folks are playing. TRiO programs also will offer financial aid guidance, including awareness and providing resources for both public and private scholarships, again, to help bring down that cost for attending college. They do counseling, again, to improve that financial and economic literacy. So some of those life skills, and as it pertains to finances and that transition from childhood to into adulthood, really, or really, the high school into college, and then that college to post college. TRiO advisors are there playing a role, helping students acclimate and understand what it means to go through those transitions. They also must assist students in applying for graduate and professional programs. That is one of the biggest drives behind TRiO. TRiO students are not required to go into graduate professional programs, but if TRiO students do decide to participate or asked to participate in the McNair program, which is one of the programs that not all TRiO programs offer, but can be offered by TRiO programs, then those students are going to need help in applying for and paying for graduate and professional programs, because that is required by McNair nationally. And then last, and again, this is specific to community colleges, is that they must aid in two-year programs that students are trying to apply to, and also helping in that they're aiding current two-year program students in applying to and obtaining financial aid for four-year programs. So helping with that transition from the community college into a four-year institution. So as you can see, a lot of these projects that TRiO and SSS provides have to do with serving low-income folks and their specific needs as it pertains to higher education, including an understanding that TRiO folks are first-generation students, and so they don't understand things necessarily about academic advising or what that entails or what that means, or financial aid, financial literacy, scholarship, getting into graduate school, getting into a doctoral program, transitioning specifically at Walla Walla, transitioning from a two-year program to a four-year program. Laura didn't go into many specifics about their specific campus projects, other than the ones that I just mentioned. But I do, again, want to highlight the fact that what sets them apart from other national TRiO programs or TRiO programs at four-year institutions is that, of course, at a four-year institution, those TRiO programs are not aiding their students in a transfer process, because the assumption is that students who enter the four-year institution will stay there for all 4 years and will graduate from the institution, and so don't need transfer resources. So there are two different guidelines that Laura mentioned as it comes to measuring and defining success for the TRiO program at Walla Walla. So first is the national TRiO requirement, again, whether or not they're meeting those programs that I mentioned on the previous slide, and whether or not they're serving students and providing those needs. And if TRiO programs are not, if Walla Walla is not providing those specific programs and those mandates as detailed on the previous slide, those are grounds for the institution to losing their grant funding. Additionally, though, Walla Walla has some internal measures of success. So they use mid and year-end evaluations with all of their students. They do exit questionnaires with students who either leave the institution or with their seniors. They also rely upon student stories and testimonies, whether that's in an informal setting, students chatting within lounge space or chatting one-on-one with an advisor, but then they also do a couple of student story sharing testimonies. These usually happen during the exit questionnaires. The exit questionnaires are often questions that are asked in long answer form so that students can really share their personal stories that the staff can use to evaluate their work. And they also do some retention and persistence data. So through these additional measures that the office then pairs up with the year-long objectives that they set at the beginning of each year, they see whether or not they are serving their students and their unique needs to the best of their abilities. And then they take all this data, again, these evaluations, these questionnaires, these testimonies, and then they use that as a way to, again, to measure whether or not they're really meeting the needs of their students, meeting the national needs, and then, of course, meeting the institutional needs as well. Laura had this to say about her staff and the reasons for their success. In a season of declining college and community college enrollment, It takes a strong staff that are committed to the cause and purpose of the grant, a team invested in the mission of serving our demographic. It takes thoughtful strategizing and program development to appropriately serve the community of students unique to each individual campus. It is critical to build positive relationships with the instructional staff and faculty for student recruiting and advocacy. It is evident through Laura's words that she feels that she has a staff who is truly dedicated to the cause that has been put forth by TRiO and the Department of Education nationally, and as they have decided as a staff. She feels that because of the specific type of students that their program is dealing with, especially at that institution where with it being a PWI, a predominantly white institution, and with so many folks not identifying, or with the population of folks that they have who don't identify as white, and how hard that can be, with the added burden of being first generation, low income. It's important that her staff understand truly how to work with those students and to keep providing these resources for these students, because it's really important to these students' success. I realized I made a comment about race as it pertains to TRiO students, and I just wanted it to be known that TRiO students can be white students if those TRiO students are first generation, low income, and or have some sort of disability or have veteran status. It just so happens that a lot of TRiO students are not white students, but that's possible for students to be white. Anyway, so in reflecting upon all that I learned from Laura and from what I read about TRiO as its national standards dictate and whatnot, it really what it comes down to for Walla Walla and their program, and honestly all TRiO programs, is that the TRiO program is guided by what the national program, what the Department of Education is identifying and stipulating. So TRiO programs mostly operate based on what that information is. Again, remember I've talked about those student support services programs that are dictated, and how Laura was saying that we pretty much stick within these boundaries. We have a couple of ways in which we assess our success that's different from National TRiO, but the programs and the services that we provide to our students stay within those kind of broad definitions set forth by the Department of Education. And again, this is not to say that Walla Walla and other TRiO programs don't have their own personalized goals they'd like to mean, but what it does mean is that within the framework laid down by the Department of Education, TRiO programs then identify the specific needs of their students as it pertains to the framework, and then use the grant money given to meet those needs. So for example, for the TRiO program at Walla Walla, they see the importance of the academic advisors, and the TRiO advisors, and playing that role of doing the academic advising, the financial advising, scholarship advising, and again, that transition from the two-year institution, which is Walla Walla, into a four-year institution for those students who need it, or as is more common for Walla Walla students, to transition straight from Walla Walla and the two-year program into the workforce. So that one-on-one time with the advisor, the relationship building that happens in the trust, then inevitably develops as a result of all of the advising sessions, is what is needed and is the foundation to this program in order for this program to meet its success and to move forward. And I just think that that's incredibly fascinating, because I believe that student affairs professionals love and believe in building quality relationships with students, but sometimes because of money, because of other institutional needs or institutional barriers, I think sometimes relationships get put to the side, and understanding a student's identity and understanding where a student comes from is not always taken into consideration when it should be. And at Walla Walla, that is one of their priorities, and it has to be one of their priorities because of the specific demographic of students with whom they are working. Before doing this research and before talking to Laura, I had a baseline understanding of TRiO offices, but no personal experience. My freshman roommate was a TRiO student. A couple of friends of mine in undergrad were TRiO students and were McNair scholars and are working on their PhDs right now. So I understood how TRiO operated from a four-year institution standpoint, but I was really curious as to what it looked like at a two-year institution, and at a two-year institution when 58% of the student population is white. And I'm so happy to hear that, as I have mentioned several times throughout this presentation, that one of the main goals of Walla Walla TRiO is to aid those students as they transition from the four-year institution. We talked about this in a couple of different lessons throughout the summer in this class about how sometimes the transition either from two-year to four-year, there's not a lot of guidance, or the transition from community college into the workforce is not as strong as it could be. And it's comforting to know that TRiO, who works with marginalized students in some way, shape, or form, again, first gen, minority status, low income, right? So they already have that marginality placed on them, and then to think that maybe these students are floundering, but it seems like they're not. If they're a part of the TRiO program, then they are being supported in their unique ways and their unique needs based on their identity and their circumstances. So of course, this concept, this transition and advising, to the transition into the four-year program, the transition into the workforce, is a unique component of a community college TRiO program. Again, just acknowledging the uniqueness that comes with this being a program offered at a community college. So that's all that I have. This concludes my presentation. I want to thank Laura and the rest of her staff at Walla Walla Community College for allowing me to learn a lot about their TRiO program and the services they provide to their students. I really enjoyed, again, learning about Walla Walla throughout the semester and within the past couple of weeks. And I have enjoyed learning about the TRiO program at this institution. This is my Works Cited page, and I am going to end my video here so that when it stops playing, you can still check out my Works Cited page. And thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you have a great day.